What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 53 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Monday, February 17th, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malama. Before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in Major League Baseball, where we had some injury news come up in the last few days for both New York teams. Let's start off on the Yankees side of things in the Bronx and down in Tampa, where New York Yankees slugger Giancarlo Stanton has not swung a bat in 3 to 4 weeks, and he isn't sure that he's going to end up being ready for opening day due to tendonitis in both of his elbows, something that he dealt with, he said, for all of last year and for parts of the postseason especially. And you got to give the guy credit with how he played in the postseason. I mean, you look at the numbers for Stanton, 273 with 7 home runs, 16 RBIs in the postseason a year ago. And he did have one injury spell last year with a strained left hamstring that kept him out for just over a month, and still played with the tendonitis, like I said, in his elbow. So, I mean, he's 35. You got to really rest up when it comes to a guy like Giancarlo Stanton. You can't really risk him, especially at his age and what he's able to do for this Yankees team down the stretch and into the postseason every single time he goes out and plays for the New York Yankees. You just got to give this guy a bit of rest. And even though he won't play probably opening day, it's a 162 game season and definitely not a guy to really risk if you are the New York Yankees. They have some guys that they added in this offseason. And when you look at Paul Goldschmidt and Cody Bellinger, two guys that have the power, and really probably not the power of a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, but together and the two of them paired up with Aaron Judge, they could definitely figure out ways to make up for some of those home runs that they're losing if Stanton is out due to injury. So we'll see what happens, but obviously Giancarlo Stanton says that he's really going to ramp up his workout here in the spring and see how he's truly feeling, and that will ultimately make the decision whether he'll make it to opening day, March 27th, when the Yankees take on the Milwaukee Brewers. So we'll see what happens, but Giancarlo Stanton most likely out, and we'll see how long this goes on as spring training, just begun in Tampa for the New York Yankees. Let's look at the Mets side of things down in Port St. Lucie, and Frankie Montas is shut down by the New York Mets officially today for 6 to 8 weeks with a lat strain. And Montas, a guy who the last couple of years have just been filled with injuries, and prior to going 7-11, 4.84 ERA, 30 starts last year, Reds and Brewers. The season before that, missed all but one outing, and he was recovering from a shoulder surgery. So, I mean, this is a guy who's dealt with injuries before, but when you look at the Mets side of things, now this is where the depth really comes into play. I mean, the manager, Carlos Mendoza, as well as the president of baseball operations, David Stearns, have talked about having the depth at starting pitching. And it was a question for some people whether they should go out and get one more guy. There were rumors of a guy like Dylan Cease. There's rumors whether they should have gone out and grabbed one more solid starting pitcher, but they were going with the guys that they felt were right for their plan. Guys like Frankie Montas, as well as Clay Holmes is there. Griffin Canning is another option, and they also have more depth options in Paul Blackburn as well as Tyler McGill. So when you look at the Mets, it's something that you're a little bit shaky about. You're still worrying about a guy like Kodai Senga. How long this year can he stay healthy? And had a great season a couple years ago. Only 3 starts, including postseason last year. And now you have Frankie Montas, who's at 6 to 8 weeks, most likely going to need a full ramp up. Probably not going to make a start for the New York Mets until mid-May, maybe even into June. So they're down one starting pitcher. And if any more guys go down, then you start to really worry if you're a Mets fan. And we talk about it each and every week. This lineup is loaded. that's not something that you're going to have to worry about. The runs will come in with Lindor as well as Soto, and now the addition once again of Pete Alonso. I mean, the runs will come. However, starting pitching is a huge key down the stretch, and they need to really rely on this depth. And if they are going to rely on this depth, I mean, they have to have five, six guys that they could really go to, and it cannot be, oh, well, this guy's out with injury, so we're going to have to rely on one more guy. A guy like Blackburn, who's been selling enough, but is just a depth option. McGill has had his problems here and there, and may not be the most trustworthy depth pitcher. So when you look at it, they have the six starters. Now it's down to five, and yes, they have the bit of depth in those guys in Blackburn and McGill, but I mean, you're hoping for the best right now if you're a Mets fan in terms of this starting pitching. They had the plan of going six starting pitchers in a six-man rotation. That's fine, but you have to now cut that down just a little bit with Montas being shut down till probably mid-May or even June, like I said. So we'll see what happens, but something that Met fans were really worrying about, and yeah, it's coming just a little bit early this time and only in mid-February, and the Mets already have a bit of an injury problem in their starting rotation. So we'll see what happens, but Frankie Montas shut down 6 to 8 weeks, a lat strain for the Mets right-hander. Let's finish things off today with a college basketball update, and let's go back to Saturday's games where we had the biggest game of the season by far down in Coleman Coliseum in Tuscaloosa. Number one, Auburn takes down their rival, number two, Alabama, 94-85, and you knew this game would be high scoring. It was just a question of who would score more here, and Auburn said, yeah, we got this in their rival arena, and they first half was tremendous. They really came out strong, 42-33. They led it at halftime, and then they matched 52 points each in the second half, and Auburn with a 9-point victory. Johni Broome, what a player. 19 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, and if he hasn't made his case for the Wooden Award or the National Player of the Year, I think this might be the difference right now in Johni Broome winning that award. I mean, what a player and what a performance he had in enemy territory and on the biggest stage, taking on number two. So the Auburn Tigers have proven that they are the number one team in the country for sure. And obviously, the only couple of losses, they definitely want that Duke game back. They lose in Cameron, but then they also want that game against Florida just a couple of weeks ago where they end up losing for the first time on their home floor. And obviously, Florida really came out firing and put up 90 points against them. And now Auburn gives Alabama a taste of their own medicine with a lot of points up on the board, high-paced offense and high tempo in the end, and 94 points down in Tuscaloosa for Auburn. They get a huge win and solidify themselves once again as the number one team in the country. Duke won on Saturday. They beat Stanford 106-70. Florida controlled things against South Carolina 88, to 67. And then you look at a big win on the road for Houston, number 6, as they take down number 13 Arizona at the McHale Center down in Tucson. And when you look at this game, they were down at halftime, Houston, and Arizona kind of controlling things, and they figured things out. Houston did on the defensive end, held Arizona at the McHale Center to just 28 points in the second half. They win it 62-58, and that's a monster win to really prove in my mind that Houston's the top team in the Big 12. No doubt in my mind that they are the top team in the conference, 13-1, and they'll be the favorites to win the Big Ten tournament in my mind. And they've just proven that any type of situation, they could really get through. The one blip, an overtime loss to Texas Tech, they figured things out here, and they get a monster win on the road, and something that not many teams have been able to do, win at the McHale Center. down in Tucson against Arizona. So big win for them. And another upset, Wisconsin goes to Mackey and for the second time this season in a game that you really think, all right, well, Purdue should handle things and figure things out, and all the win streaks on their home floor, and Mackey's such a tough place to play. How about Wisconsin, the second team to go to Mackey and win this season, 94-84? And the Badgers put up 58 points in the second half, and it was all about offense in this one. And 94-84, what a victory for the Badgers, and they move really high in the Big Ten Conference. I still think that Purdue has the tiebreaker, just one more win up on the board for the Boilermakers, but Wisconsin making a late push, 10-4 in Big Ten play. They still are behind Michigan and Michigan State at the top of the Big Ten Conference. So we'll see what happens, but what a win for the Wisconsin Badgers, and Purdue kind of sputtering just a little bit and have had some losses earlier in the season and a lot of losses due to injury. So they still need to bring things back, and I think they will make a great push down the stretch, and still obviously a top 25 team and a tournament team and a team to watch out for in the NCAA tournament. But they need to figure things out on the defensive side, as 58 points on your home floor for your opponent is just not good enough if you're a Boilermaker. So they need to figure things out. Just a couple more losses and a couple more upsets in college basketball on Saturday, as Texas took down Kentucky, and Lamont Butler as well as Jackson Robinson did not play in this game, and Texas handles things on their home floor down in Austin, and a big win for them as they sit at 5-8 in SEC play, and they need to figure things out. But Kentucky, interesting enough, I mean, Kentucky has come up with big time wins, knocked off Tennessee twice this season. They've beaten Florida as well, but they are 17-8 and 6-6 in SEC play. Just too many losses, you would say, in SEC play. If you're the Wildcats, still need to figure things out, and of course, they just need to get everybody healthy. Butler and Robinson, of course, the two most important guys for the Wildcats this season, need to get them back on the floor, and that's really mission number one for Mark Pope and his guys. Kansas loses once again, in Utah with a big-time win on their home floor, 14-11. Utah is now on the year, and Kansas falls to 17-8, 8-6 in Big 12 play. I mean, when was the last time you saw really 6 losses for the Kansas Jayhawks in the Big 12? It just does not happen too often, and they really need to figure things out. And it's just been a rough year for Bill Self and his guys. They lose this one 74-67, and Utah gets a big win on their home floor. Just quickly on to Sunday, St. John's continues to roll, and they get another win, third ranked win in a week for the Johnnies. And when you look at this one, 79-73, they take down Creighton, and Creighton was number 24 at the time, obviously drops out of the rankings in this new one with losses to UConn and St. John's during the week. But you look at St. John's, they just continue to find ways to win, and it's all really, in my mind, on the defensive side and shots down it in the clutch. I mean, RJ Lewis Jr., 23 points, 14 rebounds. A lot of those points come in second half. And when St. John's needs a guy to step up, RJ Lewis continues to find ways to be the guy, and finds himself next to a guy like Kadari Richmond. Those two guys down the stretch going to be really, really difficult for anybody to play against them, especially with how well they play defensively. I mean, they are all over the place, all over the floor, and they really cause havoc for their opponents. So big time win once again for the Johnnies, and they knock off but beat obviously the higher seed is St. John's. They beat Creighton in a massive win for the Johnnies at Madison Square Garden, 79-73. When you look at the other game, the other big game on Sunday, Michigan goes on the road and takes down the Buckeyes of Ohio State. Ohio State, 11 losses on the year, but they are still classified as a tournament team, 7-8 in Big Ten play. Michigan, on the other hand, 20-5 and 12-2, and in sole possession of first place in the Big Ten Conference. They sit at number 20 in this game, and they move up in the rankings earlier today, as they're now all the way up to number 12 after two massive wins this week. 86-83, they win this one at Ohio State, and a big win for the Wolverines. Let's take things to tonight and tomorrow. Just quick preview, as Duke has to go on the road to Virginia, and Duke 13.5-point favorites, number 3 seed right now on the year, and Virginia has been struggling. Obviously, Tony Bennett leaving the program earlier this season, and the Virginia Cavaliers still trying to figure things out. The other game tonight, number 19, Arizona, going on the road to take on Baylor. This one 10 o'clock tonight, and Baylor actually on their home floor 1.5-point favorites. Arizona lost their last road game at K-State. This one should be a good one, but you got to figure who's going to be the difference here for Arizona and really figure things out for them on the road. Still need to really get a guy to step up for them. They got a couple of guys, but you're waiting for a guy like Caleb Love maybe to really step up and be the difference maker in the end for Arizona. Couple games tomorrow, really big ones, and in the end, you look at Purdue at Michigan State. That's probably the biggest one in my mind, as you have that matchup 7 o'clock tomorrow night. And this one is a great game at the Breslin Center. And will Purdue lose once again in Big Ten play? Purdue going on the road to Michigan State. Michigan State has lost a couple here and there, but they really righted the ship with a great win on the road at Illinois on the weekend. So they need to pick things up and just keep things going here. And Jace Richardson has been a massive difference maker. What a player, the freshman and the son of Jason Richardson. I mean, when you look at Jace Richardson and just games down the stretch, he's been a very clutch player, and Tom Izzo's got a real strong player there in Richardson. The other game I'll talk about, Texas A&M going on the road against number 21 Mississippi State, and Texas A&M 9-3 in SEC play. Mississippi State, has started to fall, but then they find a big win over Ole Miss and their rival on the weekend. Then you look at the Aggies, and they're trying to bounce back. They're actually on a 5-game win streak now since that loss to Texas, a heartbreaker at the end that they lost it, but they have 5 straight wins against SEC opponents, and now they get a tough game on the road against Mississippi State, who's trying to really figure things out here. This one's going to be a real close one, 7 o'clock tomorrow night. So a lot to look at for the next couple of days in college hoops, but a lot of teams dropping in the rankings and a lot of teams moving up. We'll see what happens down the stretch here, as we are less than a month away from Selection Sunday and March Madness. But that'll do it for episode 53 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malamuth. Thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Wednesday.